Hi everyone. I can't believe this class is already over. It definitely flew by. Um, During this class, I learned a ton about pop culture and also about what I thought about a lot of these topics in pop culture in a way that I had never looked at them before. Really digging a lot deeper. I've watched Beyonce's entire Lemonade video previously to this course, and I never really understood a lot of the hidden meanings, and I thought it was so interesting. Really glad I took this class. So I'm just gonna kind of go through what we talked about each week and kind of maybe some of the points I made on Twitter and what I thought about all these topics. So we started out with Kim K's book Selfish. On Twitter, I pointed out how this book was really giving her fans an inside look into her personal life and kind of a goofy side of her with some of the sunglasses, the sunburn, whatever, but it also is still very much promoting her sexy brand that she's always trying to promote, hence posting naked pictures, as almost naked pictures on Twitter and whatnot. But it was really interesting to still look at the book. I would have never purchased it if it weren't for this class, so I guess that was interesting. After that, we discussed a passage from Roxane Gay's book, which I had never heard of, but I really liked how she called herself a bad feminist, because I think I can relate 100%. I don't think I fall under what you think of when you hear the word feminist, but I think that's really what she's just pointing out. You can still be a feminist and not be your typical feminist. There's much more to it than what many people think, and there's so many stereotypes about it, and I thought this was a cool article kind of trying to break those. And I really, really enjoyed her discussion on fandom culture. It gave me a whole new insight to that whole world. And it also made me realize that throughout my life, I've totally been a part of different fandom cultures at different times. I was obsessed with the Jonas Brothers, Twilight, the Hunger Games. I was definitely a part of various fandom cultures at one point. So it was really interesting. Then the next week was Beyonce's. It was all about Beyonce, kind of about her statement, VMA performance that made a very visually bold statement with the words feminism in the background, which was really cool because I feel a lot of performers hadn't really done that before. And Beyonce is so huge. I don't think there's anyone better that could have done it. And then we talked about her visual album, Lemonade, which I would kind of mention. I've watched that whole album and never saw so many of the underlying things that we discussed and so many people brought up on Twitter, which was really cool. And it was cool that the album was released in a time when a lot of stuff was going on in the news regarding police brutality and wrongful killings of African American teenagers and stuff. So this the Formation music video definitely, I think, fueled a lot of conversation about that and got people other than those who were involved talking and thinking about it, which was really cool. We then talked about Kendrick, which is kind of similar topics to what Beyonce was discussing, Black equality, all of that. And he uses his lyrics really to tell a story. But also his music videos, he's uses these bold visual statements of the police holding an African American in his car. It just makes a huge statement, and both of these people are such big celebrities. They're reaching so many people, which is pretty cool. Then we talked about Miss Marvel, which I had never heard of, but she's so cool. I've never been into comics, so I'm assuming that's why I've never heard of her, but I really thought it was cool and so influential because she's literally unlike any comic. Almost every comic hero is a white male. I mean, now luckily we have Black Panther coming out, which I saw was so good, and Wonder Woman came out, and in the comics I think Wonder Woman was a lot more sexualized than she is in the recent movie that came out. But it's really cool that they created a young Muslim female comic book character because we've never had anything like that. Then we briefly touched on the Hunger Games, did some readings about it. I'm extremely familiar with Hunger Games because I loved it growing up. I read all the books in probably a week, and I saw all the movies at midnight. I definitely am familiar with it, but I think it's really interesting to think about the idea that it could be a foreshadow of our country. Not that I know, like, how much, to what extent that would be, but it's really interesting to think about and pretty crazy. It's a world that's not that far off from ours, honestly. So then lastly on the blogs, I really enjoyed writing my blog. I wrote mine about Kanye West, someone who I've always been obsessed with his music, but I never really dove deep into his character. I knew about a lot of his controversies, and I think I kind of blew him off and was like, yeah, everyone has their problems. I can't imagine being in the limelight, but it was really interesting. Reading much more in depth about him. I do think of him differently now, which is interesting. I still appreciate his music so much, but his whole affiliation with the Kardashians and his fashion, that's become so big. It's really kind of separated him from just his music, which I think he used to be just thought of as a rapper. And now he's definitely thought of as much more of a pop culture figure than I think he ever was. But it was really interesting, and I also enjoyed reading everyone else's blogs. They were so interesting. There were a lot of great conversations on Twitter. I honestly have not been on Twitter in years, so this was a great opportunity to get back on it. It was really fun. Overall, I really enjoyed this course, and I learned a lot. So, thank you.